Hey Team Bio, welcome to your screencast on Introduction to a Dihybrid Cross. So yesterday in the screencast, you completed a monohybrid cross, which was tracing the inheritance pattern of one gene. We used the example of simple, dominant, and recessive inheritance pattern, and we looked at one gene, the MRC1 gene, which controls whether or not someone has freckles. In a dihybrid cross, we're going to be looking at the inheritance pattern of two genes. And the two genes that we're going to be examining are, once again, we're going to look at the MRC1 gene. So we have the freckles allele and the freckleless allele. And this allele is dominant. And the freckleless allele is recessive. And we're also going to be looking at the hairline gene. We have an allele, capital W, which is widow's peak. It's kind of like the triangular shaped peak of hair at the top of some people's hair. And then we have little w, which is the straight hairline. And widow's peak is dominant over the straight hairline, which is recessive. Okay, so two different genes, the MRC1 gene and the hairline gene. Now, if we have an individual with the genotype capital F, lowercase f, capital W, lowercase w, this person is heterozygous for both genes. It has one copy of every allele. And if we examine their phenotype, we would see that they have freckles and a widow's peak. And if the freckles gene, or the MRC1 gene and the hairline gene are both on different chromosomes, then this is what this person's chromosomal arrangement would look like. This would be a chromosome that carries the freckles allele, and here is a chromosome that carries the non-freckle or the freckleless allele, and this would be before these chromosomes were duplicated, so before S phase of meiosis, or sorry, of interphase. And then they have one copy of the widow's peak allele and one copy of the straight hairline allele. Okay, so what types of different gametes can this person make? Well, you know that in meiosis, there is this pathway, or not a pathway, this phenomenon, I guess, called independent assortment, which means that the homologous chromosomes can line up randomly across the metaphase plate. So we might get an arrangement that looks like this, where we have the freckles allele lining up on the same side as the widow's peak allele, and freckleless and straight hairline on the other side. Or it's equally likely that this arrangement is going to happen, where the freckles allele lines up with the straight hairline allele, and the freckleless ends up with the widow's peak. So this individual here can produce all of these different types of gametes in meiosis. So 25% of their gametes will have freckles allele and widow's peak allele. 25% will have freckleless and straight hairline. 25% will have freckles allele with straight hairline allele, and 25% will have no freckles, widow's peak allele together. So they're going to create these gametes in equal proportions. And this is true, so that is the case. Okay, so if we take two people who are heterozygous for both genes, we know that the gametes that they can produce are the ones that we just said above. This person, they both can produce F, capital W, or little f, little w, or capital F, little w, or little f, capital W. And that's true for both of them. Okay, so now we go on to create our Punnett square, which notice is much bigger than the Punnett square we had before because we have many more different types of gametes that can be created or that are created during meiosis. So instead of a 2x2 grid, now we have a 4x4 grid. So we can put the possible gametes around the outside of the Punnett square. So this is lots of writing. Little f, actually, I'm going to do it like this. Capital F, capital W, capital F, lowercase w, lowercase f, capital W, lowercase f, lowercase w. And then the same thing down this side. And I'm trying to make my w's look slightly different from one another intentionally, so it's a little easier. Okay, so then to figure out the possible gametes that this cross could create, or sorry, these are the possible gametes. If we want to figure out the genotypes of the possible offspring that we will see here, we just fill out the Punnett square, which is just a fun amount of writing. Okay, and that's it. So we have all of these different genotypes, and these are all the possible combinations of gametes that would result in offspring. So then we can go through and we can look at all of the different gametes and we can tag them with their different phenotypes. So this individual has, I want to do pink here, freckles and a widow's peak. And so does this individual, and this one, and this one. And also, so does this one. So anyone with one copy of a dominant allele in either gene is going to exhibit the dominant genotype. Okay, I think we've got all of them. Okay, so these individuals are going to be freckleless and have a widow's peak. So that is this individual, and this individual, and this individual. And then these folks are going to have freckles and straight hairline. And this individual is going to have the homozygous recessive phenotype, freckleless and straight hairline. Okay, so if we made this cross, we would expect to see this ratio of offspring. We'd expect to see a 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 ratio in the offspring. So if we have a heterozygous for both genes cross for both individuals, we see a 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 ratio. Okay, and this is, of course, if the genes are unlinked, and that means the genes are on different chromosomes. So if the genes were on the same chromosome, we would see a different pattern here in the offspring. Okay, I think that's all. We're going to do some slightly more complicated inheritance patterns in class tomorrow. So get excited to learn about codominance and multiple alleles and all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, that's all. See you tomorrow.